everyone. Welcome to our first video podcast of No More Secrets. As always, I'm your aunt, Mary Albrecht.
And I'm your niece, Katie Albrecht. And we thought for this new recording style that we're doing, we're inviting a guest on that's been on the show a couple times, but also is just really interesting. And from what I've been told, has really soothing voice.
And is always camera ready, so therefore the first camera video podcast
it just makes sense. Yeah.
So my nephew, Joe Albrecht.
And my brother. Welcome back.
Thanks.
Say hello.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be back here.
Actually, one of the reasons, too, is that his birthday is February 4th, so this Thursday is when this episode is going to air. And we thought that it would be interesting to talk about maybe some of his birthdays, and that led us to thinking about, well, the one big birthday, which was 12 years ago, I think 2009, was when your dad, my brother, had that major accident in the snow, which really changed the course of everything in terms of his addictions and all of his problems. So it's not a really fun topic, but I really did want to get Joe's view of it because it was in our book, Broken Neck, and we talked about it, from my point of view, because I was in the hospital that weekend.
And I feel like we've hinted at it on the podcast as well, but we just haven't actually
really talked about it.
We haven't really told you guys exactly what happened. And it's a sad story, but it's interesting. And I think it could add some value to listeners and everything. So.
Right. And so, Joe, I guess let's start with the night of your birthday. So February 4th, 2009, it was your
22nd
birthday. Okay. And so why don't you just go ahead and tell the listeners how you found out what was happening or how it started?
Well, I believe it was a Friday night. I was out with some friends because it was my birthday and it was a Friday night and I was 22. So we were just out on Water Street and I remember I just got a call from Dad and he's like, hey, he just asked me to come pick him up from the bar, which was a call I'd gotten from him a lot. Like not a lot, I guess, but enough. And it always bugged me, which as I think about it now, there's worse calls to get, I suppose, than, hey, I'm at the bar, can you come pick me up? As opposed to, hey, I'm in jail, can you come bail me out or something like that. But
which that's happened too, but not to you.
I have never gotten a come
Grandpa.
bail me out call. But yeah, as I think about it now, hey, come pick me up from the bar is a reasonable call to get. But at the time, it's just really...
it's irritating.
Yeah. I mean, it was just it was... I don't know, 8, 9 o'clock on a Friday, something like that. And he's just calling, I was just like, what do you think I'm doing right now? I can't.
As a 22-year-old.
Yeah. I can't drive. I have no
It's your
desire.
birthday. Yeah.
I have no desire to, even if I could, but I can't. So I just basically hung up on him.
Did he sound drunk when, slurring?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really bad?
Yeah. I mean, he definitely, I'm like, yeah, you're going to have to figure that out on your own, but that's also happened in the past, and so he figured it out on his own. And
did he call you back when you hung up?
I don't really remember. I mean, maybe not. It just kind of, it wasn't really, at the time, anything remarkable for me. It was just yeah, okay. It's kind of just how it was. Like I said, I've gotten that call before, and, it would... And I was just like, whatever.
So that's how it started. Then let's fast forward to the end. And then we can fill in the middle. When did you find out what ended up happening to him that night?
So I go on with my night as usual, have a okay time and just come home. And the next morning I got a call from Mom saying that Dad was in the hospital, that he had tried to walk home from the bar. I'm not entirely sure which bar. But it was February and he didn't make it. He passed out in a snowbank. And so he was in the emergency room and I was like, okay. Still not really okay. Yeah, that's unfortunate, but I wasn't really.
You weren't really trying to react because there were probably so many
There's so many times that you react that you get kind of numb to it after a while.
Yeah. So I was just like, wow, that's really bad. Let me know how things go. But I wasn't trying to beat myself up over it because there's nothing I could have done anyway. I didn't want it to.
You would have put both of you guys in or at risk if you also were like driving drunk and then picking him up and everything. Like it could have also been another problem that way too.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what my mindset was at the time, but as I just think about it now from kind of a logical point of view, like I probably would have picked him up from the bar and he probably just would have gone back out to a different one.
Oh. Is that what he's done before? This is interesting to me because you are so much older. Like at this time, I probably couldn't even drive, or I was just starting to drive or something. You know?
Yeah, you're probably 17.
Yeah, I started taking driver's ed when I was 17, so I was late and everything. So
yeah,
I've never gotten this kind of experience from him.
Yeah. So. He was always just. It wasn't. Got kicked out of a bar, the night's over, or like it's whatever. It was can't physically drink anymore, or basically. So like, good chance he probably would have gone back out. Who knows what things would have been different had he done that anyway, but.
Mm-hmm. So we found out later that he actually had gotten some really bad news that day, and that's why he was out, like basically trying to get smashed or
drink his sorrows, yeah.
Or was he trying to kill himself? You said.
Yeah, so I think I'd mentioned it before, but he told me later on, like years later almost, that like that night he was trying to drink himself to death because he had just found out that he was no longer going to be your coach, Katie, for the Lakers. They just pulled it from him, like basically pulled the rug out from under him, and like he took that pretty hard because that was like the last. I'd like to think it was like the last moment he had to be a father. You know, I think that's what he was holding on to, is like,
as I'm about to go to college and everything,
yeah,
his last kid.
And just like the last time to really be involved and to help out and, do something that he was good at too.
Do you remember why they pulled him? I've heard various versions of this, but I can't always remember.
I never really got a reason. I never asked. Just kind of assumed. I think they just ran a background check on him at some point for whatever reason. Why? I mean, he'd been with the organization for, years, working with me and, and with you, and like and they seemed to like him, but all of a sudden that they just pulled the rug out from under him.
But he started showing up drunk more and more
Probably.
often, right? That's what I heard from Grandma. I mean, she even admitted
it past him. Yeah,
probably that something along those lines. I mean, like I said, I never really looked in or asked into it because I just kind of assumed. I was like, well, yeah, that just makes sense. Like, so
it turned out to be more than just he passed out in the snow. Apparently, they estimate that he was in the snowbank for hours.
Probably.
I heard anywhere from 4 to 5 hours or something like that.
Because the bars close at 2 or whatever, or
2.
He was found by somebody at 7 in the morning when it got light in February. It's not light till.
I hadn't really heard those details either, but that makes sense.
I guess he didn't have his gloves on.
Yeah.
He didn't put his gloves on. He had a hat and coat on. He had his boots on, but his hands got completely immersed in the snow and frostbit to the point of they were going to amputate his hands. Is what
Sounds about right.
Grandma said to me.
Yeah.
They were black.
Not at first. At first they were just clawed and like really red and stuff. And then once they put it in water, this is what my mom said. When they put it in like lukewarm water to thaw it, then it was then where the capillaries just like exploded, and then he became black hands.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think because it was something like that, where it was like they were thawing out, and that's when they became black, kind of sausage-like things.
So is that why you're not supposed to run your hands under hot water when they're cold? You're
Probably.
supposed to do like cold water?
It can make it worse, yeah, because you want it. I mean, you want it to thaw, but you don't.
Is this not well known in the emergency room?
I mean, I think his hands were just so far frostbitten that there was nothing they could have done differently.
Maybe.
That was my impression. I don't think they put it in hot water by any means.
Yeah.
I just think this was 4 hours worth of damage.
Did you go to the hospital then?
Nope.
And why is that?
I don't know.
Was he in the ER?
It never really occurred to me.
And then he got admitted?
I think so. I actually don't know.
Okay.
I don't know the details too much of it. I never went and visited him. It never really even occurred to me to go visit.
When did you find out how bad his hands were?
Later that week, maybe. I don't know. I think it just was like yeah, this was inevitable. I'm surprised something like this hasn't, like, I guess I was just numb to it. I just didn't.
Where were you, Katie? Were you at home?
It's interesting that Joe says that because I don't remember this either.
See, you guys, you just block it out.
I remember it happening. I remember it being a part of our lives ever since that moment because it was always about him and his hands, afterwards. But I don't think I ever went to visit him in the hospital. I don't know if we were not encouraged to by mom or whatever.
Mom certainly didn't make a point to say we should go visit him.
But I don't.
He might have said something like, I don't want visitors. Maybe.
Well, I know my mom and dad went up.
Okay.
So that your mom called them and they got in the car and went. So it was important. Maybe your mom wanted that kind of support, but not to worry about you kids, with it. But I do remember I was in the hospital with an obstruction. I get these intestinal obstructions, and I was going to have surgery within the next few hours. And I told Terry to call my mom and dad to let them know, I'm having surgery. And so I get this call from Grandma, my mom, and I think she's calling to check on me and how are you doing and do you need me to come? No, she didn't even, she already knew Terry had called, but she was already distracted, so she didn't even really ask about me. She's like, Mary, it's so bad. And I'm like, no, it's not that bad, Mom. I've had this before. They'll just, fix it, this and that. Da-da. No, it's Ken. And I'm like, what? Ken again? Like, I'm in here in the worst pain of my life. I'm going
getting surgery. Yeah.
I'm getting ready for surgery in the next few hours to get my intestines untangled, and you're worried about Ken? Well, then she started saying, that it's really bad. His hands, they might have to amputate him. She started to cry, which she's never done that before. Like, she hadn't cried for years, and she was shaking and we're on our way up there kind of thing. And so I ended up, just having surgery without them. But it was just another, it sounds so petty, but it was just another example of when I could have used my mom there. She had to run there
just get
instead.
It hijacked again, huh?
Again. But then how can you argue with that? Well, they might have to amputate his hands. Well, you can't be like, well, I don't care.
She wasn't exaggerating, yeah.
And she wasn't exaggerating.
This is one of the few times that he wasn't actually exaggerating what was wrong,
And I actually then when I realized how bad it was, and I was like, I tried to comfort her because that's my role in the family, and then, had the surgery. But after my surgery was over, I started to think really hopeful thoughts that this had to be your dad's bottom, to the point where he's gotten so drunk that he passed out for 5 hours, is what I heard, 4 or 5 hours in the snow, and didn't wake up. How scary is that? That maybe he'll clean it up now, right? That was my hope, and it just didn't go that way.
Well, it's funny because you aren't entirely wrong, because he stopped drinking.
He did stop drinking right then.
Almost, I think the only, after that, he might have had a couple beers total in 8 years, the rest of the next 8 years of his life, and that was it. And he basically just cold turkey, this is, can't touch it ever again. Don't even want to. Now he replaced it with opioids, but
right.
But that is.
He didn't drink.
It was just a cold turkey stop to it, and it's kind of always confused me. It's just, well, okay, this was traumatic. I get it, but I don't know. You were just all of a sudden.
If you're an addict, how did you all of a sudden quit? I always thought
he replaced it.
We found that out later, but he was good at. He could switch addictions. There were times when he wasn't drinking as much, and he would be just binging on food. He was.
Yeah.
Or Coke Zero.
I kind of think that he just kept switching addictions.
Yeah, he replaced the alcohol with the sugar craving. That helped him.
Right.
He said that multiple times. That helped him keep the cravings down, but it still made me just question addiction in general. It didn't, just kind of what the origins are of it and how it really affects people in general. It just became sort of a mini piece
study
of study, interest study for me.
Well, I think if you hit such a low like that, you do what you have to do to survive first, you know, like, because that was clearly very traumatic. Like, I even heard of kind of an acquaintance of mine who went into, he's, you know, about my age, and went into liver failure because he was drinking so much and everything. And since then, he hasn't had a sip of it. But he was like a very, like a problem drinker. Like, he drinks way too much, more than the average like partier or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, he would be going all day, liquor and everything. And because he could have died, he had to like kind of clean it up a little bit. So I think it just, if you have something that's like shocking enough, it kind of affects you differently, you know?
Yeah, and I suppose everyone's definition of what is shocking enough can be
is varies, yeah.
Yeah, once you're like, oh, this has to be rock bottom, and then you end up just like, nope, that's just a little platform, and still way farther down the cliff you can go.
And so what ended up happening is and this is also what bothers me, is that they gave an addict a very, very addictive painkiller prescribed. But I know there were other options, like oxycodone and hydrocodone, and all the opioids are so addictive that I feel like
there's
if
like
the
a
whole
crisis about them, yeah.
if there's the reason that you're in the hospital right now is because of addiction, so let's give you addictive pills to help with the pain that got caused from your addiction. And I find that to be really irresponsible. And he started to just up the opioids every day, because that was worse than the alcohol, I feel like, because he started mixing opioids and mixing drugs, and
he was allowed to have them,
and they were
so he could
prescribed.
justify them, yeah,
right,
Yeah.
Because of the prescription. But then he ended up going to multiple doctors because the one prescription from the one doctor wasn't enough. And then, like, he would go to another doctor to refill the same prescription, and he did that for years, I think, where he was just like gaming.
Where eventually, like, just the radius of where he was, you know, having to go to was getting farther and farther away.
and because he got banned from some pharmacies in the area, didn't he?
Because they caught him on it, yeah.
There were plenty of time, like, I had to drive him down to, like, down in this area multiple times just to go to a doctor's appointment.
So he could get more painkillers, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I never questioned why we were driving all this way down. I mean, I kind of did, and I knew it was, I just didn't care.
I assumed it was something to do with like insurance, or like grandma and grandpa paying for it or something.
Yeah, I mean, and as I look at it now, I'm like, yeah, it's a little naive, but like, you know, those are stories that are spun, like, oh, is insurance, you know, saying this, that, and that, and I'm just like, do you even have insurance? Like, what?
Yeah, good point.
Well, there's that, yeah.
Yeah.
So backing up to when it first happened, I remember I was at Grandma and Grandpa's house maybe a month later, because I was recovering from surgery too. Nobody seemed to have remembered that, meaning Ken.
First time hearing about it.
Exactly.
And I've heard it from you, but only years after the fact.
Grandma and Grandpa and Ken, nobody even like, how are you? It was all, how's Ken? And I was over there, and he came in, and he had these huge mittens on. They were just like a bandage, all wrapped up, and some blood was coming through, and this and that. And I was shocked at how willing he was, because I didn't really know him that well by then. You know, I had been staying away. I was shocked at how willing he was to be thought of as pathetic, and he played the victim, and he loved the attention. He loved to sit there like this with his hands and just be like, look at me, like, you know, like you would think there would be some embarrassment of like what I did to myself, but that to me is a true mental illness, when you're like loving the attention, even if it's
though you're
so negative.
I thought the same thing,
yeah.
like to give him the reason to play the victim, like a legitimate reason to play the victim was a dangerous proposition, just because
for him, because then it
he was so good at it anyway to give him that ammo
to manipulate. Yeah, then this like made it easier for him.
And they ended up putting him in hyperbaric chambers, where they fill the room with oxygen to stimulate blood flow, to stimulate healing. And he did heal, but it took a long time. Your mom, I don't even want to know what she had to do to take care of him.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
You know, because he couldn't use his hands, so you can't shower, you can't go to the bathroom, you know, all of that.
From what I heard from her daughter, she said that it was a lot of like, it was probably the bathroom stuff, but like she talked about the hearing aids, because he had a hearing aid. She always had to clean it out. I mean, pretty much every little mundane task.
Because he couldn't grip.
Yeah, because his fingers were sausages, essentially. Like she had to do pretty much everything for him, and was at his beck and call for the rest of his life, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. And but he did get the blood flow back, but then I started to question whether or not it would have been better to amputate him, because I do believe he was in tremendous pain for the rest of his life with neuropathy.
For sure, yeah.
He said they itched all the time, they burned, they were cold. He wore gloves all year round, inside or outside.
You'd always say, like, on the good days, they feel like they're on fire.
Ugh.
And that makes sense.
And I believe that, actually, because they were black. I mean, they were gone.
They did not look healthy, for sure.
And so I wonder if it would have been better, and then he could have gotten a prosthetic. And so, but nevertheless, the only way he could get out of pain was to just keep popping pills. He had antidepressants, anti-anxiety. He had all the different opioids. He had just regular Tylenol. He had, just like a Xanax kind of thing, just anything to calm his hands down. And he just got more and more deranged with his mental state. And he started, like we said, pharmacy hopping, and then state hopping, coming to Illinois and then that stopped working. And that's when he turned to street drugs, right? Like, because he couldn't get enough.
When he couldn't game the system anymore, he had
to
go
get
to
enough from it.
Dealers,
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of opioids out on the street as well.
Exactly.
Perks, as they're called, I guess, is the street term.
And I remember,
as I found out,
But he was different. Like, it really was a change. I was hoping it was going to be his bottom and it would be a change for the better. But to me, he really changed to the point where there was absolutely no reason. There were, how the cycle was with his drinking, where he would drink a lot and be like a raging animal, and then the next day he would be all hungover, and then there would be remorse, and then it would ramp up again. I felt like all that cycle just left, and it became this constant state of delirium. And
there was less remorse after that.
And and rage and confusion and slurring his words all the time, and not,
The squeaky voice, as Mom would mention every once in a while.
What is that?
It was literally just like his voice would get like super high and super squeaky, and you just sound like it just sound weak almost, but it was like it just, I'm not even going to try to do an impersonation of it, but like it was just
like raspy and
it was like high pitch and raspy and kind of just like, and it sounded, it almost sounded like a big trying to do baby talk.
Oh no!
But
really?
also,
maybe like I'm the take care of me.
Yes.
Oh gosh.
Person who looks like Ken. I got that one a lot. Is that what you're talking about? Where he would kind of do
no,
like the
no. This was different. This was more just like a
person that looked like Ken.
This was more just like talking as a baby, and just like it was just like Mom was always like, I'm not going to do that for you if you're talking the squeaky voice. Like, his squeaky voice is out. Like, just stop.
I've never heard this.
Me either. This is a new one.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't. I think it actually had like a lot of it was unintentional. I don't think it was something that he tried to do, but like he'd just be fatigued or whatever was going on with, from the concoction of chemicals that he is currently on. But it was just like a pathetic sound, and just just like a I don't even
think
know.
pathetic is a good way to put it.
Yeah,
like
I just have a hard time describing it.
Something.
But it was I saw it a few times, and I'm just like, no. And to see Mom call him out on it even, and just kind of stuck with me. The one time I actually saw her do it.
And he had some problems with his feet too. Even though he had his boots on, they got a little bit frostbitten.
He didn't have boots
as well.
His feet, he had shoes on.
He had like tennis shoes on.
Oh, tennis shoes. Okay.
Probably had holes in them, considering how he.
I think that was before the Velcro, because he got Velcro shoes once he had the.
He always
hands.
He always walked kind of weird though, and his shoes would wear out and like.
Oh yeah, they were kind of tilted.
Yeah,
right?
like the outer portion of his shoes, just like all of, because he would buy like $6 shoes and wear them for like 10 years, so like they'd just be worn down.
Yeah, so it wasn't really keeping his feet warm or dry, pretty much. But it did more than having bare hands, which is why they weren't quite as bad as his hands. But
yeah, it was still pretty bad.
But still bad, still painful.
You know, there's so many layers to this story that I find interesting. If we were going to talk more general terms, I don't understand why there isn't a systemic computer system for all pharmacies across the country where, you know, well, how could he hop from pharmacy to pharmacy to pharmacy and then go across state lines and nobody knew his history?
It is weird.
You know, and even, not even pharmacies, but doctors, because this one doctor would just like, you know, give him the medicine, and then he'd go to another doctor and say he had back pain and he'd get more medicine, but he already had some.
I mean, there are, I haven't been really following it too much, but I mean, there are class action lawsuits going on now against like Purdue Pharma and that, I think.
Things like because of that kind of thing?
Yeah, because of just the opioid in general.
The opioid thing, exactly.
And so like that is I don't know, again, I don't know the details of it, but it is something that is in existence now that like people are like, yeah, wait a minute, how are people able to do this? Why are these doctors just kind of incentivized, if not more than kind of incentivized to do it? And so like, yeah, if you're incentivized by you know, to write prescriptions, and, you know, you're not going to look too deeply into like, all right, well, yeah, clearly you're in a lot of pain. You need a prescription.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's sort of a topic that could be discussed, you know, on a more public policy level or something like that. But I also think that knowing Ken, a lot of the doctors just were like giving him the prescription so he would go away. Because like he probably was relentless with
persisting,
probably
with
that
begging for this and begging for that.
And it probably was literally just like, yeah, look, obviously, look at this.
See, and then he had an excuse.
Yeah,
exactly. And so, and so there's that, and then there's the whole thing with doctors. But then there was Grandma who she saved cash in shoeboxes. Remember, we found that after she died. Mm-hmm. Up in her closet, she had she had cash put away for your dad so he could get his drugs. Wow. You know, and it's like, but aren't they covered by insurance? Why is he paying cash? You know, like,
was it labeled like for Ken's drugs?
It wasn't, but I know that she told me that she stashed money away so Grandpa wouldn't know.
But then you actually see how much money she stashed.
I found all these stashes of hundreds.
Wasn't he giving him money too, though?
But not for the drugs. I mean, in theory. Yeah, my mom was specifically feeding his drug habit because he needs his drugs, Mary. He's in pain, Mary. But the doctors are monitoring it, as is the pain clinic, you know, that he's supposedly enrolled in. And, you know, he's an addict and this and that. And do you know where he's getting these drugs? Could you perhaps pay the pharmacy with a credit card instead of just handing him cash? Because that could go to the street dealers, right? And does he bring you a receipt? He would come down, go to Sunset Foods to the pharmacy, and then get his supposed drugs, and Grandma would reimburse him. I'm like, well, did you see the receipt? Oh, Mary, you always see the worst in him, you know? So it was just handing him cash
but then, like,
all the time.
Fast forward to when she had cancer, and she was taking morphine for her cancer pain and everything,
right.
And then she tells Dad to go go get it or something for her.
Hand me my box of medicine.
Showing exactly where her medicine is, and then suddenly, mysteriously after that, the morphine is missing.
Yeah,
so it just continues.
It just gets worse, and I guess I'm shocked at how bad things got with him and our family in general, like with Grandma and Grandpa and the dynamics, but nothing ever changed the dance. You know, like, how bad does it have to get? Even when she's dying and she's in excruciating pain until she could get more morphine at the end of December, and she died January 13th, she was 10 days without morphine in excruciating pain from spine tumors, which I now know a lot about because Terry has them, and they're very, very painful. Mm-hmm. But she wouldn't turn him in because the hospice nurse was coming. And I said, well, we're out of morphine. How can you be out of morphine? I said, well, we have a family member. And my mom goes, shh, like that. And then she looked at me and she said, we need to talk. Because she needs to report things like that if there's a suspicion of somebody.
Wait, who? The
hospice nurse, yeah.
So you talked to her in private about it?
And so then I talked to her in private, and she's like, do we need to monitor this closely? Do we need to do an investigation? Do we not want to give any more to your mom because this could happen again? Like, this is illegal. We can't be handing out drugs knowing that there's somebody in the household that's taking them that's not the person
Not
that
the
it's
prescribed
prescribed
person,
to. Yeah. And
But
so
you didn't say anything to the nurse?
I did. I talked to her privately, and my mom and dad were so angry with me that
Not the person stealing the drugs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that
angry at
leave
the
it alone,
person who
Mary.
came up
Leave it
clean.
alone. It'll be fine. And then they said straight in front of me to that hospice nurse, she has issues with her brother. She always sees the worst in him. Don't worry, we'll handle it. It's fine. And so you're saying there's not an addict in this house that is taking your drugs, illegally.
Well, then he
No.
came around and blamed it on Terry's guys.
Right. Right.
And I remember hearing that, and we've talked about this on the podcast before. I don't know if you've heard that story, but
Yeah, I think I came across. Yeah, I think
he was saying
heard it
that
once or twice.
that Terry's guys came in and stole the morphine. And then I just didn't even think anything of it. I was like, oh, maybe they did, because I didn't know like all the rest of the story and everything.
Until much later, after you moved down here, it came up.
Yeah.
Because the way it happened is I was going twice a day to give Grandma shots of morphine in her stomach. That's to keep her out of pain. And I went that morning. It was a Saturday. I gave her shot. I put the morphine back in the box up on the top shelf. I got back 8 hours later. I go into the box and it's gone. Mom, where's your morphine? Oh, I don't know. Didn't you put it back in the box? Well, yeah, I did this morning. Where is it? It's not here. Well, look around. Look under the shelf. And then finally, Mom, was anybody in this box today? Well, I had your brother get it down from the shelf for me when he stopped by. What? Ken was here? And you had him get it down off the top shelf? Well, I can't reach it, Mary. I can't walk. And then it was gone. But yet, did I have proof? No. I mean, I didn't see it happen.
Just a good logical reasoning behind it,
And so then Terry's guys, they're not there on a Saturday. They weren't working. They weren't on a job at Grandma and Grandpa's house anyway. But, sometimes they would stop by to help with something, but never on a Saturday. And so it was like, it can't be Terry's guys, and
they had about as much reason to be there as Dad did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it wasn't even planned for him to come down unless she just didn't tell me, but he would come down a lot and stuff. But I remember Grandpa even saying, why would you do that? Why would you have Ken get your box of drugs down from the top shelf? Even Grandpa was like, and we got a locked medicine box after that had a combination, because even though it was only a cup, like 3 weeks and then she died.
Did he show any frustration afterwards, or...
Ken?
Yeah, it seemed like he would try to get in and couldn't,
Did Dad seem frustrated about something? Come on, how could you even...
Meaning, did it seem out of the... he was mad or mentioned anything about the locked box or anything?
I don't think...
Did anyone see him go up there again?
See, this was December 20th.
Did he seem unusually irritable?
As an irritable man, yeah. Okay, that's fair. But I just thought, maybe, he would... I think of when I put a lock when I was living there,
Yeah.
And I put a lock on the door of my bedroom because he would go in my room and steal stuff.
Things from you. Yeah.
He stole a packer.
Steal your drugs.
Steal my drugs. Yeah. No, he would steal a Packer sweatshirt. He probably thought it was his, but it was mine, and I left it in my drawer.
Because that's the same size.
It was a big sweatshirt, but he probably thought it was his, and he I don't know. I noticed that it was missing after one time he came down, and shortly after that, I put a lock on, and I think Steve saw him trying to shake the handle and stuff.
Okay,
and
yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
really pissed off that he couldn't get in.
Yeah, but then he didn't want to admit it because he didn't want to admit that he was trying to get into your room,
right?
Which was your room then.
But
and
Steve could hear him trying to break the lock pretty much, or shake it open.
Why was Steve there?
Because he lived there.
Okay.
At that house,
okay.
At Acorn Lane.
This is in Acorn Lane. Sorry,
okay.
This is at Grandpa's house.
Yeah, okay.
But no, so that was December 20th, I specifically remember, and Grandma went into the hospital for the last time December 27th, and you guys had your family Christmas on December 26th. So the only time he would have maybe tried to find the drugs would have been December 26th, 27th. And I remember you saying...
2014 you're talking about.
Of 2014.
Okay.
I remember you saying that even though you had that wonderful Christmas Eve, by the 26th, he was more out of it than ever. He was laying on the couch, not even participating in Christmas because he was
a dichotomy of
probably high on morphine, right?
Yeah. Because the Christmas she's talking about is when we all played that game. And it was like really fun. And it was like the most like lighthearted I've seen him in years.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And the day after, I knew that it was like not going to be the same. I knew that this was like we're running out of time with him being in a good mood kind of thing. And then like the next day, I don't know, or maybe the next second day, whenever we went to Grandma's, he was just like he was completely comatose on the couch.
Worse than
like Grandma. Okay, I remember Grandpa and Grandma sitting us down and kind of basically telling us it's like the last Christmas.
Yeah.
You remember that, right?
Yeah.
And Dad was sitting there passed out. It was like because they knew that Grandma was going.
Yes.
And they said like they said like really nice things about it, like things are going to be like a little different. And Grandpa was even giving like he said like really kind of uplifting motivational stuff,
which is not like him.
For him. I mean, maybe it was one sentence and I just processed it that way, but
yeah.
But like it was a nice but sad moment that Dad was just like completely
worse. I mean, I just think he
yeah.
was high on morphine. I just do, you know. So that would be my guess. And but then, you know, after she went to the hospital, the hospice came and took that pill box away because they didn't want to supply it anymore, and they were worried about if there was somebody in the house. So,
right, yeah.
But no. So he didn't. I don't know if he tried to get into that box, but definitely Grandma was in miserable pain until January 1st. It was really sad. Legally, they couldn't give her any more morphine until the end of the month or the beginning of the next month, you know.
Which is weird, though, because morphine isn't addictive, isn't it?
It's not addictive, but it takes the pain away.
Well, yeah, but it's still, I'm just confused why they weren't able to just supply more of it. I thought that was just kind of like, that was the thing. Like, all right, if someone's in pain, just give them some morphine. Like, it's not that big a deal. Like, because it's not addictive, right?
Well, you could say the same thing about weed, but it still like alters your mind a little bit.
It's pretty potent, and I think people do take more. It does get rid of pain really well.
Addicts will go after anything. They'll even do cough syrup if they.
Well, I understand that. I'm just talking like from the hospital's point of view. Like, oh, like you have a cancer patient here who just needs morphine. Like, why? I didn't realize it was that regulated.
Morphine is definitely regulated. Yep, it's a regulated substance, and who knows why?
I mean, I don't know much about it, but it doesn't seem like
it actually is pretty addictive. It's not addictive as much as when you come off of it, it's really dangerous. So I think that's why they regulate it, because Terry's on morphine for his cancer right now, and they don't even want him to go cold turkey with it because it's really hard on all of your organs and everything. And so maybe they want it to be regulated so people don't take a bunch of it and then just stop and then have a heart attack or something like that. I mean, there's something about it that's really hard to get off of. You know, maybe it's not hard to control yourself, but it's when you stop it. Yeah, so especially if you get it illegally.
I suppose. I don't know. That's just interesting.
Situation. That's a side, situation. I don't understand the whole opioid thing as it stands. Like to me, I would like to talk about, that in future episodes about how these people get so many drugs legally, not even from the street dealers, and it's really a problem, and people are dying, from it. But I don't blame only your dad at all. I blame the pharmacists. I blame the doctors. I definitely blame Grandma and Grandpa.
I was waiting for you to say that, yeah.
Yeah, because, come on, this is seriously a problem. I remember when Uncle Bob didn't come that time, but Aunt Liz and Cindy and Cindy's daughter came down, Haley. And I remember Liz pulling me aside and saying, what is wrong with your brother? He's down there on that computer. He's wearing a shirt with holes in it, and he's, looks greasy like he hasn't showered, and I see him popping pills left and right. Why doesn't your mom tell him, take a shower, put on a good shirt, and come up and visit with the guests that are at this house that you don't live in? Like, meaning, why are you here, first of all? And if you are here to visit with us. But he's down there. She saw him popping pills. He had pills in his pockets all the time. It was so easy for her to see, that tell your son to take a shower and come visit or go home. But instead, nope, he's down there on that computer, probably gambling, popping pills, drinking Coke Zero, eating lots of sugar. I mean, the guy was just dying already then, And so to me, they had the purse strings, Grandma and Grandpa. They also had the house that he liked to come to. So they really could have said, you don't come here until we know that your pockets are empty. You're not popping pills. Take a shower, the bare minimum for the guy's sake,
Yeah, except I think the times that they may have tried that, I mean, he was able to just like, well, no, I'm just going to force my way. Like, I think he's physically forced his way past, like Grandpa standing at the door.
Do you feel like they were afraid of him?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
Physically? Like,
oh,
or,
yeah, for
okay.
Sure. They knew, I mean, I've seen it, erupt to the point where it could very easily become physical confrontation and yeah, like you just kind of weigh the options of like, well, I'm either going to go to the hospital or I can, bend just a little bit here and, kind of just live to see another day, honestly.
Wow, they were afraid of their own son. And you do hear of sons
I absolutely believe
killing their parents, right?
I mean, he's certainly physically capable of it. I mean, obviously.
He was strong, yeah.
Yeah, and so, like, he set that into enough of a rage by saying, like, cutting off, everything.
That could end up
Absolutely.
Definitely. Wow.
I mean, yeah, it's...
Do you think your mom was afraid of him in that way? Like if she had tried to divorce him, that he would have come back and hurt her or killed her?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
I thought she was more afraid of him taking everything that she had.
Yeah, I mean, she was afraid certainly of that, certainly of... She probably felt bad. I mean, I think she was less so. She definitely, stood up to him more than most people. But yeah, I think it's a fear factor, absolutely. And it's hard to really blame
fear
that.
Fear is a motivator. We did just talk about fear in our last episode.
Yeah. It's hard to really blame somebody for that because, what can you really do? If you say no and someone's like, yeah, I'm not going to listen to that. Like at that point, you're kind of calling your bluff almost.
So you have to really...
You almost have to bring the cops involved.
And even that's not going to be a permanent thing. Like
right.
So
especially if he's just yelling, like that doesn't make the cops come and do anything about it.
Yeah.
If he's being physical, maybe, but even then, he could be bailed out, and there's lots of.
Yeah.
He's been through this cycle,
Yeah, it's just like any other abusive relationship.
The last time he was at Acorn Lane at Grandma and Grandpa's house was Thanksgiving. 2 days after Thanksgiving. Oop. At least I didn't hit it with the wine glass like I normally do.
You can still cheers it,
I always, oh, sorry. Somewhere in the episode,
And then you hear like a big clunk. Yeah.
Oh, anyway, Grandma was already, dead. And so it was the first Thanksgiving without Grandma. And he came down on that Saturday after, and he got into such a rage that Steve had the cordless phone ready to dial 911, and he just started screaming at Grandpa, inches from his face, because my dad said, if you're going to come down here and not talk, a lot of the problem was Grandma, like meaning she don't be mean to him, Al. But now that she was gone, Grandpa was trying to stand up to him more, and he's like, don't just come down here and sit on the couch with a pillow over your face and not talk to me. You might as well just go home. You're going to kick your son out. And it became this huge fight. And Steve actually jumped in and said, get away from Dad. And he pushed Steve against the door so hard that Steve hit himself and got like jarred. And then he kept saying, Dad, can I call 911? Can I call 911? But then my dad kept saying, no, not yet. And then your dad left. But that was the last time that Steve and Ken, or Steve and Grandpa saw Ken. That was the
interesting
the scenario. Now, my dad was so shaken up, and this is in our book as well. He was like, oh my God. And I'm like, Dad, you were good parents. You didn't deserve that. And even though I didn't think that there were a lot of reasons why I thought they could have done better with him, I didn't want to say that to him right at that point. So I just, and And he's like, I'm not so sure, and all of that. And he was just such a broken man, Grandpa was, about his son. And it was sad, because I could see that he just, this tough man was just really broken by his son, hence the name Broken Neck, But 2 days later, Grandpa calls Ken to apologize. And I remember going over there because I was going over every day after Grandma died, and he was on the phone apologizing. And I said, why are you apologizing, Dad? Well, I had a hand in it. I told him to get out, and it just became this really bad cycle. But now in hindsight, I'm really glad that they had, because they did. It was a nice talk with your dad, nice enough, And so they had that moment of, I'm really sorry and I love you. And I think my dad even might have said, I love you back. And that was their last conversation. And then he died 3 weeks later on Christmas. So I'm glad that Grandpa had that to fall back on, that it wasn't that he got to say, I love you, or and I'm sorry, or whatever he said, that made him feel better.
Regardless of if he was in the right or not, it just is, it feels better when you know that you did, like the last conversation with someone is not a bad
right.
Forgiveness is power.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't have that.
Right.
The last time I saw him, he was following me around the house, around the Grandpa's house. It was after the memorial, I think. Do you remember that?
Okay.
I think that was the last time that I saw him, and I couldn't handle being around him and everything, and that was something that was hard to deal with, after.
Was there did you talk to him live between, that would be, that was May 2nd, and then he died Christmas, so that's a lot of months. I know he left you messages, but you never actually talked to him, did you?
I don't think I did.
All of those months.
I don't know if it was my last conversation, per se, but one of the last memories that I had of him was basically him standing at my doorstep telling me that he had liver cancer, and me going I don't believe you.
Wow, that was like October.
Please get off my porch.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was one of the last.
I don't know if it was the last one, but that was that's the legacy.
And as it turns out, when we had the autopsy, he didn't have cancer.
I never actually saw that, but yeah.
We can show you it. I think she has it here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe you guys did show me, and I didn't.
He did, and he said that he had surgery, remember, on a Sunday, and then
it was done in a couple hours.
But then he didn't want to. He took a cab home because he didn't want to bother anybody. It's since when don't you want to? Anyway.
Yeah.
So do you know that? Do you remember your mom? She admitted this to me. She asked the paramedics the night that he was laying on that floor dead Christmas morning.
Yep.
To look for an incision. Did he have? Does it look like he could have had a recent liver surgery a couple months ago? Is there a scar there? Nope, nothing there. She actually had the wherewithal, to be
I that's good for her. I did not. I mean, I thought about it, but I was just all I was thinking honestly was, they're going to look in the pill box, in the pill cabinet, and they're going to see a whole bunch of them missing, and they're going to rule us an overdose, and therefore the whatever insurance situation is going to be a mess. And I was actually thankful it didn't happen.
They ruled it heart failure.
Yeah. They're like, there's a lot of stuff missing, but that's normal, I guess. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I was thinking at that time.
That mom wouldn't get paid out.
That she would somehow get screwed.
Not get Social Security or
just anything,
whatever he had.
I didn't know how it worked.
I'm also glad that they didn't blame her for the death, because sometimes they go, maybe this is a gender reversal or something. It's they can blame the spouse for those kind of accidents.
Usually they investigate the spouse right away.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, maybe it's different because it's a woman versus a man.
I think it's just because that's just, yes, they could, but people die all the time. I don't think they're going to do a full-scale investigation on most deaths.
Maybe I just watch too many murder mystery shows or something. Yeah.
But most of the time, they don't even do autopsies. They just be like, yeah, this person died. Whatever.
But do you remember what she said that's in the permanent records of Milwaukee County or whatever county you're in? Because when is the last time you saw your husband, talk to your husband? They asked her that. And she said, well, I was leaving to go to work, and he said, have a nice time at work. And I was really surprised because Ken never says anything nice. And that's actually written in the investigation report
geez.
for all of eternity. He never says anything nice.
record.
I was really surprised.
He never says anything nice. I could just picture her being like on autopilot and saying everything that comes to her mind, because it's obviously that was a hard night for her and stuff.
Gee, yeah.
And usually she's more tactful, I guess is the word. But when you're in shock like that, you say you say the truth,
It's just funny to see it in writing. Like the first time I read that, I was laughing.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God. They actually typed that out.
Right.
And then I thought, well, gosh, now they're going to suspect her, because she's like, well, he never says anything nice. Well,
I'd suspect suicide at that point. Oh, he was real nice. And then, but anyway. Again.
Actually, you know what? He was nice the last couple of weeks of his life, according to your mom. They had some nice drives around the neighborhood. They looked at Christmas lights.
Wasn't Steve saying the same thing, that they had some nice moments like the last couple of weeks?
And Steve is convinced that he knew he was on his way out. There was some relief, finally, in his personality that made him able to be a little bit less doom and gloom. I wouldn't call it joyous, but he definitely was like a regular human being. In a lot of instances, they had a couple of really good conversations. I mean, Grandpa didn't talk to him after the 2 days after the Thanksgiving thing, but Steve did.
Yeah.
And he really felt like, wow, I really have a brother. He's really being nice. You know what else, though, Steve predicted? Because I think before Thanksgiving, they ended up meeting up in a park. Were you up there when Jan and Steve and your dad? No, I don't think you were there. And they ended up seeing a homeless guy over there, and his name was Ken or something, or whatever.
That does not ring a bell to me.
Yeah.
I
was there. I think you were there too, because we played Frisbee.
What?
Maybe that was after he died, though.
This was after he died, and it was Sheridan Park.
Okay, yes, okay.
Yeah, we were, there was a homeless guy that came up. We were having a picnic.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't think Steve was there.
This was I'm thinking of before he died. I guess Steve was invited up there. That's what it was. Your mom would invite Steve up a lot to try to cheer Ken up, to give him something to do.
Okay.
And then they ended up going to a park. And Steve called me and said he looked like the Walking Dead. He said there was like no life in his eyes. I've never seen him look that bad. He can't have much time left. And that was like the end of October. And then he died on Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just a really sad story, I mean, I guess, what are we trying to do to the listeners here? Like bring you down or whatever, or talk about addiction or drugs, or just
life has sad moments, sometimes.
But this was really hard. Sad. Like he was sad forever, and he never got the help he needed. And I guess again, we can go back to that's the whole reason why we're here. The reason we wrote the book is because of him. And the reason we have the podcast is because of the book.
Because all these things happened, we thought we could tell this story and hopefully help other people that are going through similar or parts of it or whatever.
And I do think if he were in this era right now in exactly the same way, like as a teenager, he would definitely be into the system more. Back then when we were in high school, you didn't talk about mental illness. You never talked about depression. Ooh, depression. Oh, you're on antidepressants? That means you're like weird,
Yeah, crazy.
And, so just one generation later, he may have been okay, or he may have at least gotten into the system.
Different outcome.
Yeah. But at least that shows how far it's come, and because you guys are willing to talk about it on air, even, mental illness and depression and anxiety and stuff like that. So, and addiction. Right. So, so I, again, go back to liking to think his life actually has had a lot of purpose in general, just with my growth in life, period. And then after he's passed, with all of this and getting to know you guys, and now spreading out the word of it's okay to talk about it. It's not, there's nothing wrong. There doesn't have to be secrets. You don't need to handle it yourself. Grandma wouldn't even reach out to her pastor about her son. She wouldn't talk to any teachers about it. She would never go to counseling. She didn't even tell her friends. Her friends didn't even know how bad he was. The ones that were real close, like the Kubitzes and stuff, they kind of had an idea, but she would never talk about it. They could just see it, And she just simply tried to handle it completely on her own, her and Grandpa. And really, with situations like this, it definitely takes a village. Like, you have to have so many people involved to deal with mental illness, I think. So
yeah, and your whole family kind of
on
united
board
and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so are we totally bummed now?
Totally bummed out. This is just.
I feel fine.
Happy birthday, Joe.
Happy
you
birthday.
Can think about that on Thursday. Think about 12 years ago.
12 years ago. Was it 12? Yeah, 12 years ago.
I mean,
34.
to bring it back like full circle, did that like affect you on birthdays?
Nope.
You just completely were okay.
Not at all.
So it's not like Christmas where every Christmas kind of was about him.
Christmas kind of bummed me out. They still kind of do. Well, the first few kind of bummed me out.
After he died.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this before.
Yeah, I mean, we've also had some pretty amazing Christmases too. Like the first Christmas after he died, actually was one of the better holidays I think I've ever been a part of.
Which one was that? Where were we at?
We were down in Acorn Lane, just hanging out. We might have done that white elephant gift exchange.
But
Was
wasn't
that the
when
Nerf gun?
Might have been.
It was the Nerf gun.
Probably, yeah. But it was just a really good time, and I just remember we, feeling closer to you guys than I had ever probably, and we just kind of.
Wait, was that when you were going through a breakup?
Yeah. So I had all
So
kinds.
you
of,
relied on your family. I
had all kinds of stuff going on, and just like every reason I actually had to leave early to go to work. I went to work and just completely broke down and just left and came right back. Drove an hour both ways. Spent about 10 minutes at work and just turned around. But it was just, that was one of the better holidays I've ever had. And, there's been lots of good ones too, like, since then. But
yeah,
it's been.
I think that's interesting, like, because we kind of, obviously we all grew up together, but we weren't as close as I would say a lot of other families were or whatever. But I felt like after he passed, kind of like what you were saying, we actually, I don't know if it's just because we're older now or if it's because he's like the major threat to our relationships is gone.
I think it's more the latter.
Me too.
Okay. I was just trying to like give a couple ideas here. But I think we have like come a long way. Like we actually have more of like a friendship with each other, like, and with Sarah too. I mean, I've always been kind of closer with Sarah just because of age, but the three of us and Mom all are like closer than we've, I think, ever been.
Absolutely.
And you can be without it being a problem. Like if we were doing something like this, even on another topic, we'd have to keep it a secret because he'd want to be here.
Yeah.
He wouldn't,
Right.
so
No more
even,
secrets, but except for the one.
except for that secret.
Yeah, so even like any mundane topics, it's just like, no, I don't really want to share that I'm going to a Brewers game because I just don't want to talk about it to him. Like,
And then
Yeah,
be
'cause
like, oh,
he's-
really? Oh,
Maybe that's-
can I
You
come?
take everything and twist it.
that might be a little bit more of an extreme example because even that he'd be like, oh, that's fun. Like, cool. Like,
But
we should
then-
go to a game sometime too. I'm like, yeah, we probably should. But like something that mundane, like just doing something with anything, you know what I mean?
But anything that involved the family, like if
Yeah.
if the Kubitzes were coming to see Grandma and Grandpa, he had to, they always told
Yeah.
him, and then he wanted to be there.
Right.
Even though he didn't really want to visit. He just
Yeah.
didn't want to be left out.
Right. Yeah. So like if I were to say, hey, Katie, let's go to a Brewers game or something like that, like, yeah, we would have had to keep that a
Like,
secret.
because it was the combination of
Right. Because then we're just like, oh, well, let's make it a family thing. Let's do this
like
family.
the family's together without me,
Yeah. It's
and-
like, well, no, like, but we just, I don't, yeah. So like that, exactly. We wouldn't be able to do that.
But I feel like we
Right.
can do that now. Like I hear about things that you guys are doing with each other, and Katie and I are doing stuff and whatever, and nobody's like, well, how come I didn't know about that? It's like, oh, great, I'm glad, as opposed to,
I mean, you guys have gone out to California a couple times, and I haven't been a part of it. Like, and it's not like it shouldn't be an issue, and it isn't an issue. Like it's that just happens. Like sometimes
Yeah.
you hang out with certain people, and sometimes you don't. Like even in a family.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like we've really evolved pretty well. It could have gone, worse. Everybody could have just gone to their separate corners and ended it all after he died. But, it's
No,
not.
we came back from the corners that we were already in.
Exactly. Well put, Joe. Whoa, that's the reason
should
we
write a
had him
book.
on.
He says smart things.
He's not only camera ready, he's smart too.
He's got the words.
All right. Well, that was fun. I mean, fun isn't quite right, but fulfilling.
Forgot the whole hour talking about depressing stuff.
I had fun.
You know?
But you know what? I
Coffee
can
and beer makes for a hell of a time.
I can immediately morph into fun, even with the most dire of topics. So I think I've learned that. So anyway,
I think that's what it's got to be about. You got to talk about the real stuff, but then also laugh through it at the same time.
Yeah, and I do think that if there's anything that can be learned from Ken's story of his addiction, probably somebody will be listening to this and it'll trigger something. You just don't know. So it's good to talk about it. So
talking about it is probably the best thing you can do.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, I agree.
It frees your own mind, I think.
And so the fact that this is our first video podcast too is going to open it up to a lot of different platforms. So maybe even more people will hear this story and it'll trigger that one thing to help somebody else. You just, that's my hope.
Yeah.
So.
Mine too.
Okay.
Well, thanks for coming back on.
Always a pleasure.
It's always fun when you come down and we make a whole afternoon out of it,
Yeah.
We sure do.
Been looking forward to this for a while now.
Yep, you got a whole new outfit for it.
I did.
From Stitch Fix. Should we plug Stitch Fix?
No, we're not sponsored.
Oh, never mind.
I got a promo code.
Hey, we can put up the promo code to help Joe. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up, but I think this was a good first video podcast, and thank you again for coming back on. So,
okay.
Until next time.
All right.
All right.
Toodaloo.
Toodaloo.